An engineer was fired after he had an affair with his boss wife, before he then tried to sue for unfair dismissal by claiming they only ever had sex. Anthony Smith was sacked after it emerged he had a secret relationship with Lindsay George for 8 months. Mrs. George, who was co-director of a specialist drainage company with husband Rob, confessed that she and Mr. Smith had had office romps during working. The 38-year-old also admitted that she and Mr. Smith had been getting intimate in some of the firm's vehicles. Mr. Smith, who had worked for the company for 11 years, was also accused of sending naked images Mrs. George said she had sent to him of herself onto colleagues. After the affair was revealed, the engineer was sacked from Yorkshire firm Full Circle Irrigation, which works on golf courses and sports pitches, for gross misconduct. He tried to sue the company for unfair dismissal, saying they had only ever had sex outdoors, even though much of the affair had taken place over winter. Engineer fired after affair with boss wife loses wrongful dismissal claim. Image, Google Maps. However, following an employment tribunal, he has now lost his case against Full Circle, which works with Premier League side Leeds United and some of the UK stop golf courses. Mrs. George, who lived with her husband in a £350,000 home in Knaresborough, near Harrogate, North Yorks, resigned from her post as director after admitting her affair with Mr. Smith. However, she is now working back at the company in an admin role. The Employment Tribunal in Leeds, West Yorkshire, heard that Mr. Smith and Mrs. George embarked on a relationship in the spring of 2020. The hearing was told that in January 2021 a suspicious colleague raised concerns that they were having an affair, which Mrs. George admitted to her husband. A tribunal report said, it was not disputed that Mr. Smith was engaged in an extramarital affair with Mrs. George, who was a company director and married to Mr. George at the time, between spring 2020 and January 2021. On January 22, 2021, Miss George admitted to Mr. George that she had had a sexual relationship with Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith was suspended on full pay that same day. Miss George said she had been engaged in sexual activity with Mr. Smith in the office and in work vehicles during working hours. Anthony Smith was sacked after it emerged he had a secret relationship with Lindsay George for 8 months. Image, Getty Images. Most read. Queen's stinging remark about Kate Middleton's lack of career and luxury life. UK weather forecast. Exact date: Storm Gladys will bring snow, wind and torrential rain. Rare snap of inside Princess Anne's private home makes people feel claustrophobic. As part of the disciplinary process, Mr. Smith also faced allegations of abuse after he shouted and swore at Mr. Smith at Leeds United's training ground. 4 months previously, and allegations of xenophobia for comments made to Polish and Romanian colleagues. The investigation, which also examined a claim that the engineer had shared naked photos of Mrs. George with staff, was carried out by an external HR firm. Given how emotive the issues were, the hearing was told. In his defense, Mr. Smith claimed he didn't have sex with Mrs. George on company time or property as alleged, and said that the abuse allegations had been. Mr. Smith claimed Mr. George had a desire to get rid of him, complaining that he felt like he was on a murder charge. However, he was sacked for gross misconduct on the HR company's advice in February 2021. Mr. Smith claimed they instead had sex outdoors and that witnesses who spoke against him had been bribed, but employment judge Emma Tegardine dismissed his excuse and threw out his unfair dismissal claim. Emmerdale hit with 76 Ofcom complaints over Mina's dark kidnap and shooting scenes. Good Morning Britain hit with over 800 Ofcom complaints over Richard Madeley comments. Judge Tegardine said, the tribunal found Miss George to be a credible witness. Miss George gave direct and candid answers to the questions she was asked, and there was no reason for her to be dishonest about what happened between herself and Mr. Smith. However, the tribunal found Mr. Smith's evidence to be unsatisfactory. The tribunal found his assertion that his affair with Miss George, which took place over a period of at least 8 months, some of which were in the middle of winter, was conducted wholly outside, to be implausible. The tribunal found his suggestion that a number of witnesses who gave evidence during the course of the HR investigation were lying or had been bribed, when there was absolutely no evidence to substantiate this to be far-fetched. He was wholly to blame for his dismissal. His behavior was culpable and blameworthy. Mr. Smith was sacked from Yorkshire firm Full Circle Irrigation after the affair was revealed. Don't miss. Couple made £40,000 running brothel with foreign sex workers in posh spa town. Anna Karen dead, EastEnders and On the Buses star killed in horror blaze in Ilford. Schools let her home after Storm Franklin made mum feel like a bad parent. Map shows how much of UK could be destroyed if Russia launched nuclear bomb on London. However, the tribunal did not support the allegation that Mr. Smith shared naked photos of Mrs. George which she sent him. Although the tribunal accepted Miss George's evidence that she had shared naked images of herself with Mr. Smith, there was no clear evidence that he had ever shared them with anyone, the judgment said. The tribunal heard Mrs. George resigned in February 2021 but shortly after rejoined the company in an admin role. The hearing was told she had avoided disciplinary proceedings herself by her resignation. Full Circle Irrigation, based in Knaresborough, near Harrogate, say they primarily work in the sports turf irrigation market. The company works at golf courses across the UK, including the historic Prestwick Golf Club in Scotland, which was the original site for the Open Championship. Read more. Emma Raducanu stalker who stole her father's shoe handed 5-year restraining order. Read more. Restaurant worker felt he was going to die after being shot in face over £2 burger.